Welcome back to the Adventuring for Mere Mortals podcast. I'm Kyle, joined by co-host Trevor, and we're back after a very long hiatus thanks to the Instagram algorithm that prevented us from finding guests. But we decided to go back to what we know best, and that is finding interesting people that we have met through our lives, reconnecting with them, and getting them on the podcast. So this month's guest is Emily Wolin, who Trev met back in grad school, but I'll let him talk more about that.
Hey, Emily, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're good. So, yeah, a little background for everyone. Emily and I went to grad school at Northwestern. It's probably a decade or so ago now.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, time flies when you're not in grad school, thank God.
Yeah, grad school is a grind for sure. And yeah, Emily and I were in the same lab. We say lab in like a weird way. We were seismology people, so we didn't have a lab. So we sat in an office and got mad at code together.
Yeah,
so
and we drove around Minnesota and Canada yelling at seismometers. So
yep, that's right. Exactly. So we did go out in the field every once in a while. But most of our time was just spent trauma bonding over code. So, but yeah, Emily, let's give you a little background about yourself. What are you all about?
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I'm Emily. Like Trevor said, we met in grad school. Let's see here. I finished that all up in 2016. I've been working as a seismologist for the last 8 years, first for the U.S. Geological Survey and then for a company called EarthScope, which supports research in geophysics. So my past 8 years and more in grad school have been really focused on getting instrumentation out and helping people pick the right instruments to meet their science goals. That involves some field work. I've gotten to do a lot of travel to cool places like Myanmar and Nepal for my postdoc, which was a super cool project. But I am on the cusp of a big career change because I have decided I'm going to put seismology to the side for a while, and I have enrolled in Farrier school because in addition to being a seismologist, I'm also a horse girl. I was a horse girl well before I was a seismologist, so I'm going to pursue that for a little bit.
And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I knew Emily was really passionate about that. So you sent her a text and said, hey, you want to talk about horses? And she was
Answer is always yes. Always.
So before we get in, deep dive into all of our horse facts and whatnot, let's do a little bit of a catch up because apologies to everybody. Will be 2 months since we've had an episode out. Just life and work and craziness got in the way. So we did not put out an episode May of this year. Apologies, mea culpa, etc. But we will try to do better. But that aside, Kyle, what have you been up to for the last 2 months?
It's so much time. We'll just hit the highlights. Lots of travel for work. This is my first full week back. West Virginia, Utah, doing the geologist thing. It's been fun. In terms of outdoorsy stuff, Aaron led a trip for Exploring More. It was a backpacking trip called Everything But the Tent. And we did 30 miles over, I think it was President's Day weekend, a little over 30 miles along the Laurel Highlands Trail. So after we finished that, they're now cooking up a new trip to do in central PA, the Foothills Trail. So about 30 miles to hit that. So that's going to be nice. Tomorrow we're actually going to head out to go camping. I'm not really sure what else. I've destroyed part of the house, painting, redoing the closet, that turned into a major project because the paint was peeling, and as you continued to peel, it ended up you had to peel the whole wall. And then now gonna redo the floors here soon. But yeah, in a
Okay.
nutshell, that's kind of been it.
Yeah,
What about you, Trev?
anytime you start digging into those projects, you always find more to fix. Like that's I won't go into my house stuff because I've talked about that previously. But what I've been up to, yeah, I've been working a lot, like having to go out to the boat pretty much every hitch for either week to 2 weeks. This time it was just over a week. And yeah, that's exhausting. I just got back Saturday evening. And so, yeah, I just signed off for work I'm going to be off for 3 weeks, which is really nice because I get my 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and then I'm taking a week of vacation. So that'll be nice. But yeah, summer full swing up here. So kids, summer activities. Emily, you'll like this. My daughter is super, super excited about rock climbing camp.
Yes.
Stoked.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, she's enrolled in a bunch of random stuff all summer, and that's the one thing she's the most excited about. So we'll find out if she likes it. In theory, she loves it already. So we'll see about
Nice.
that.
Has she ever been climbing before?
No, we were in Zion a few months ago, and she kept wanting to climb all the rocks, and I was like,
Oh,
"Girl, you don't know how to do that. You're gonna fall and hurt yourself."
nice.
Like, we gotta
She's got the spirit.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, like fine, you can't climb these rocks right now, but I will find a camp and you can learn how to climb. And she was like, yes. And she's been all about it for the last 3 months. And I finally signed her up, and that'll be next week. So she's pretty excited. But other than that, I've got a couple trips coming up that I can talk about more after I do them. But in 2 weeks, I'm doing a bike tour in Northern Illinois. It's like 470 miles. So it's a large loop. It's called the Grand Illinois Trail, but I'm cutting off part that goes down into like downtown Chicago. So I'm basically cutting off that part, and I rerouted through some trails that are on the western suburbs. So it basically goes western suburbs of Chicago all the way across through Rockford, Galena, and then you go follow the Mississippi River down and then cut back over. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I'm still getting all my gear aligned, and I just took my bike in to get tuned up, and it had some stuff that was bent because I wrecked last year, and I finally am getting it fixed. Lots of creaks and squeaks that needed to be fixed. So yeah, that. And other than that, just our adventure crew trip to Isle Royale is in mid-July. So I think I have all the details finally worked out for that too. So yeah, I'm not going to work much for the next month. I think I'm going to be in the office for 6 days until the end of July. So I'm pretty excited about that. I haven't taken much vacation lately. So pretty excited. But Emily.
And don't forget, we saw each other.
Oh yeah, we did. We actually did see each other
for our niece's birthday.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to be able to go because I thought I was going to be offshore, but it delayed enough, and I just kept delaying going out and watching it. So I actually was able to come. I came and then immediately went to the airport to go. So at least I got to go to the birthday this year. So I got to see Kyle for a couple hours and our niece.
Actually in person.
Yeah. But Emily, what have you been up to?
Oh, let's see here. Honestly, it's been a lot of mostly wrapping stuff up at work, which is a little boring. It's getting super hot here in New Mexico. So we're in the stage where it's you either get out very, very early, or you wait until late, sort of that desert creature rhythm. But yeah, a lot of kind of chill hikes. I got a mountain bike last year. I did road cycling when I was in grad school, which was a lot of fun. But I would not ride on the roads here in Albuquerque. It's a little scary. But I made a friend after I moved here. We met at the dog park, and it turns out she is super into mountain biking. And last year she convinced me to get a mountain bike. So I'm starting to get into that. So yeah. A lot of easy trails. We have a really nice trail network in the foothills of the Sandia Mountains here. So I just do that and try to not, ride over rattlesnakes or kick my shins into cactus. But it's fun.
Sweet. Well, with that, I think it's time to get to talking about some horses. But
Let's do it.
before we go full into horses, we usually start with how were you introduced to the outdoors, and then I'll make it a two-part. How were you introduced to the outdoors, and then horses? How were you introduced into the horse culture? I'll use that.
Oh yeah. How was I introduced to the outdoors? My family, growing up, pretty outdoorsy. I grew up in a suburb of Denver called Arvada, and my parents they met on a hike for photography club, I think.
Cool.
So it's been a part of my life, my whole life. We did a lot of hiking, a lot of camping, all of that kind of stuff growing up. Biking around the neighborhoods, all that. So I've been doing outdoorsy things as long as I can remember. When it comes to horses, neither of my parents has any horse background whatsoever. I honestly don't even remember how I got into it. It was probably one of those, I think I was about 6 or 7 the first time I was like, oh, it'd be fun to take horseback riding lessons. And, convinced my parents it would be a good idea. They were like, okay, well, like you're doing ballet and you're not real great at that. So maybe let's try something new, and like instantly fell in love. It was great. Did horse stuff on and off for most of elementary and middle school. I started out taking riding lessons, and then we moved over into a very niche sport called vaulting, which is basically like doing gymnastics on a horse that's cantering in a circle, which was super, super fun. And then, back to riding lessons. Leased a pony for a year. My parents were like, you seem like you're pretty serious about this. So like, before we buy you a horse, let's see if you can handle this little ball of craziness. And we stuck with it. So they're like, okay, we'll get you a horse. So
That's cool. So you said a horse term. You said cantering. What is cantering? Yes.
Okay. So the gaits, that's GAITS, not like a gate that you walk through, but like this motion pattern. Most people know like a walk and a trot and a gallop, right? So most of the time, if you are trotting and you want to go a little bit faster, you don't want to flat out gallop. There's a speed, like a gear you can think of in between a trot and a gallop. And that's what, if you're riding English style, you call a canter. If you're riding Western style, you probably call it a lope. So it's sort of
Another
a nice
question.
Rocking chair kind of way of moving. Yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna probably keep doing this. English
Please.
versus Western style. What's that?
Oh, okay. If you think of a cowboy, right, and the kind of saddle that the cowboy's riding in, so it's got like a horn in the front of the saddle that you can tie a rope around, and it's got a really deep seat and kind of like big pieces of leather coming off of the side to protect your legs. That's a Western saddle. An English saddle is a smaller kind of a thing. So if you watch the Olympics this summer, all of the events there will use English saddles. So they're different kinds, but they're generally much smaller. You sit closer to the horse. And if you're jumping, it's really nice because you can lean forward to go with the horse over the jump, and you don't have a horn stab you in the stomach. So
That's good.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of horse experience. So my mom was a big horsewoman because my grandfather like bought and traded horses for years and years and years. So like all of our riding was Western riding, just trail riding around.
Thanks.
And I think we had horses for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years when I was like junior high school. So I at least have a little experience, but I don't know. I guess I was just a little scared. They were big. They're big animals.
Yeah.
And when they want to go somewhere and they aren't trained the best, they really get there. And there's not much you could do about it sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. One of the first riding lessons I ever had, I was on a horse that was pretty big. I was a small, probably first or second grade child. And this horse decided it wanted to go back home, and I could not stop it. I felt like she was galloping as fast as she could go. And really, she was probably sort of gently loping back over the gate because she knew I didn't know what I was doing. But it's scary when they know that you don't know what you're doing and they decide to do their own thing.
Yeah, they are. That's a good point. They are kind of aware because it's like, this person isn't steering me at all. Like, oh,
Yes.
and they test it. And it's like, oh, wait, I'm just going to go. Like,
Oh yeah.
or I'm hungry. I'm just going to eat this grass. I don't want to move.
Right? Like I know you don't know how to work around this. Like, yeah, a lot of it is, yeah, it's there's that side of things, and then the really cool thing is when they realize that you do know what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be like a big show of dominance or anything, because horses communicate to each other in like very subtle ways, and showing them that like you notice the things that they notice, and that you're like a good, safe leader. Like if you can establish that with a horse, then it's like, oh, what can we do together? This is so fun. So
so how do you, that brings me to a good question. How do you start working on that type of relationship with a horse? Like, so you have your horse, rent, buy, whatever you have. How do you build up to that animal person relationship where there's that trust?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Yeah, a lot of it is in the way that you handle the horse. And there are a million different philosophies out there in the horse training world, and so I'm just going to tell you about the one that I kind of use with my horse, because there's many ways to get to the same path, but this is the one that I really like, and I found this works especially well with the horse that I have now. Her name is Freya, in case that, because I'm probably going to say it. So she I got her from a horse rescue. She has an unknown background, and she is a mare. That's a female horse. And female horses, in speaking in broad terms, tend to be pretty sensitive, pretty attuned, very opinionated about things. They'll let you know when they think something is a bad idea, right? Because that's survival instincts. Like, hey, you're taking me near that scary thing, and I'm not really sure how I feel about that, and I'm trying to tell you I'm not sure about it, and you're ignoring me, and you're kicking on and telling me to go anyway, and it can escalate very quickly, because they start out, most horses will start out going like, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. And, most of the time, the things that are very noticeable is that horse, like, pulling away or kicking or rearing or something. So it's really comes down to like paying attention to those small signs of things. Like, if their ears go back, their face, like just like us, like the muscles in their face will contract a little bit, right? So like a little bit of a, I'm not sure. And if you like give her time to check out the terrifying coiled up hose, that's definitely a python that's going to eat her, right? You're like, okay, like I know this is safe, but I'm going to give you a little bit of time to realize that this thing is okay. Look at it. Sometimes if you're on the ground, you can, like, the human could walk up and touch it. Like, oh, okay, it's safe.
It's okay. It's not attacking them.
Right? Yeah, it's really like giving them time to process stuff on their own. So one thing that, if you've never been around horses, you might not know is that horses are prey animals, right? So like they're really big, they're really fast, they can hurt you if they want to. But they evolved at a time when there were like saber-toothed tigers running around, and they had things that were trying to eat them. So they're very aware, and they're very fast, because they want to try to run away from things if they can. And if they can't run away, that's when they, it's a flight or fight. That's when the fight comes in, and they'll start kicking or biting. So they really depend on their herd mates to be aware of things, to keep them safe, to communicate with each other. And so if you can convince them that you are a good herd member by noticing weird stuff and looking at it and just like taking a little bit of time to process it, realize it's fine, that goes a long way towards building that trust.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
So I think we're kind of getting into almost to this question. But what is something about horses that a regular person that has not had experience with horses would not know?
A non-horse person.
A non-horse person. That's a better term.
We covered the fact that they're prey animals, right? So they're very, very aware of their surroundings, very sensitive to that. My favorite crazy horse fact is that horses can't throw up.
Really?
Yeah, they
Both
physically
Kyle and I made the
cannot
exact
do
same
it.
thing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, like cows, right? Cows have multiple stomachs. They can regurgitate things. They chew the cud. Horses can't throw up. So once something goes in there, it has to go all the way out. They can't burp either. Yeah.
Huh. I have no retort to that. I was just like,
That's why
oh,
it's
that's
my
interesting.
favorite
It's just like, yeah, no, that's cool.
I hope that comes up in trivia.
It interesting because if they like eat, something they're not supposed to, then usually you're in for kind of a rough, 24 hours or so or
Yeah,
more.
because it's got to work its way through the system, right?
Exactly. So,
Oof.
vet bills.
So I've kind of mentioned like my little bit of experience was with trail riding or just basically out in the woods or out in the fields, like riding. And if I'm not mistaken, most of your experience was with like riding in the ring or maybe show riding, vaulting. So what are some big differences between those two styles, I guess?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, my background is a bit of a mix. I never got crazy into showing. Like there are like rated shows that you can go to if you want to, like those are sort of the highest level shows. You're earning points. It's a series. It's very competitive. I mostly did kind of our local like county fairgrounds kind of shows when I was riding. I haven't done that in a while, but it is kind of fun. You're in an arena, right? A sandy fenced in area, riding your horse around, and either generally the horse is being judged on how it's moving, or you're being judged on kind of your, what we call equitation. So how you're riding the horse and your posture and your commands, or there are speed events, which are really fun. So you're, trying to complete a pattern like barrel racing, right? You have barrel set up in a triangle or weaving in between poles and stuff like that. The training of the horses for different things, from my view, the basics of training a horse kind of start out the same. And this is in my mind because my horse Freya, who I got last summer, I just put her first couple of rides on. So we assumed she had never been ridden before because she kind of acted like it. So we went through the whole process of like introducing a saddle, very carefully putting some weight on her, and eventually like swinging a leg over. And now she's learning how to like walk with a rider on her back, which is like not a natural thing for a horse at all. They have to learn how to balance and like, listen to cues from someone on their back instead of the ground. So yeah, you start them off, it's kind of like kindergarten, elementary school. Everyone goes through the basics. Everyone learns to tie their shoes and write the alphabet and stuff like that. And then, there are so many different sub-disciplines you can get into. So for trail riding, you probably want a horse who's in decent shape. So you can do some of that in an arena, but you want to probably start them out on more gentle terrain and give them time to build muscles and stamina, just like any other sport. You want to start that horse off like seeing a bunch of stuff, right? Like we talked about, horses are suspicious of new things. They're always looking for predators. So if you can start kind of building that horse's like library of experiences very early on, and okay, I've seen that weird looking rock before, that's fine. I've seen people on bicycles riding by. That can be a really scary thing for a horse the first time because it's a predator that's crouched over and it's coming at you really fast. It's like, okay, that's scary. But you see it a few times, they realize it's not going to kill them. It's fine. All that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of exposure, like kind of gradually introducing the horse to like different situations and making sure that they feel good about it the whole time. Right. So you start from a distance, kind of work your way in, all that kind of stuff. For show horses, it really depends on like your specific sub-discipline, but then it's focused a lot on the movement of the horse and the, maybe the type of obstacles you're trying to run around or jump over or something like that. So again, it's like starting simple, making sure the horse is staying fit, making sure that they're sound. They have very beautiful, complicated feet. So taking good care of those and all of their lower limbs is really important. Just building, like training any other athlete for a sport is just a progression of building skills and building strength.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I guess I've never thought of it that way. Like, they are an athlete. They're hauling us around.
Right.
On their
Yeah,
back, and that's not like a natural thing. You can't just
a
like
half-ton
hop on any
animal
horse.
plus another, 150 pounds of human at least. And then they're jumping 6 feet in the air into a ditch or, doing fancy, moves in the sand. It's,
Yeah, like most things, there's a lot more to it than what's on the surface. I guess.
Oh yeah.
Superficial.
Yeah, one of my huge pet peeves, like, oh, horseback riding isn't a real sport because you're just sitting there, right? And I know both of you guys would never say such things.
Never.
If you've been on a horse, it's, even if you're walking down a trail, you're still moving, and then if you're trying to like sit on something that's galloping 40 miles an hour, jumping, like that takes a lot of strength and stamina and balance and coordination to stay on there. Like I was super impressed how much better my riding got when I started doing yoga and climbing.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, I've never had like this much core strength and coordination. And it's amazing how much easier it is to like move with the animal when you have that. So.
And I'll speak from experience. If you don't ride a lot and you go and ride for a couple hours, you'll be sore the next day.
Yeah.
Quite sore. Pretty much everywhere. Your
doing that
whole
like John Wayne cowboy walk.
Yep. Yeah, not just your bottom, like your butt sitting on the horse, like your legs, because you're holding yourself on with your legs. You're like Emily mentioned, your core, because you're holding yourself stable while the horse is moving. So yeah, it's pretty much a full body workout for sure.
Most of your cueing actually comes from like independently move different parts of your pelvis, invisibly, but the horse can feel that weight shift. Like they can feel when you turn your head. So it's a lot of like body control.
Yeah. So you mentioned a term early on, horse girl. I think some people are aware of this stereotype. Would you like to tell us a little about what this stereotype kind of entails? And is it true, or is it just complete nonsense?
I'm going to flip this question around. Actually, I want to know what you guys think of when someone says horse girl, because I'm inside,
Yeah. Well, from me, it's I would say an intense obsession with horses. Like they want to be around them, ride them. They just love their horse. Like it, in some cases, it could like basically become a huge part of their personality. That's how I have seen it, been exposed to that stereotype.
Whenever I hear horse girl, I just think expensive.
Expensive hobby.
You're not wrong.
And not a hobby. You never refer to it as a hobby. It is a lifestyle.
I mean, when you spend that much money on the thing you love, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's, very, very similar to like other outdoor things I like. You can have a ton of fun on, a very cheap horse, right? Like I adopted my horse for $800 and she's incredible and I love her. Like you can have a lot of fun on a really cheap mountain bike, right? Like you don't have to go buy the $15,000 like full carbon super suspension sort of a thing. But if you want to, you can do that. And there are certainly people out there who are happy to sell you that bike and teach you how to ride it, and do the upkeep of it and, convince you that you always need the next biggest, greatest thing. So I'd say like looking at it from that lens, the horse world is very similar. Like there's a ton of gear you can buy that you can do, you can take lessons, you can do training. It does take a lot of time. And I think that's kind of a good thing, right? Because the thing about horses is if you decide you want to take a couple months off, like you can't just put them in a garage. Some people do that. I volunteer at a horse rescue in New Mexico now, and like, boy howdy, some people do forget that they have animals for a while, and then they get seized, and then they come in and we get them rehabilitated, and it's awesome. But you shouldn't do that with a living creature, right? Yeah. So you're, especially if they're on your property, you're always out there, you're feeding them probably a couple times a day, you're checking on water, you're checking to make sure they haven't found the one nail sticking out of your fence, to scrape their head on. So it's a lot of time invested into it, but I think the thing that keeps people coming back is like you can also get a lot out of it because they are, they're like any animal, right? They're another living thing. They don't communicate like humans do, but you can still communicate with them. They're very social. They're very fun. There's nothing like riding a horse at top speed through an open field. It's, a huge adrenaline rush. So yeah, they get you hooked and then you gotta keep them up so you can keep getting your fix.
So now that you have everybody all excited about horses, if someone listens to this and has no experience with horses at all, where's the first place they should start? If they're interested in learning more or maybe getting into riding, getting into training horses, where do they start? How do they head down that road?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the one typical path, and the one that got me started down this road, is to find a local riding stable with an instructor and take a couple of lessons. So if you are interested, or if you have kids that are interested, a lot of the time you can say like, hey, I'm new to horses. I want to check this out. Can I book a lesson? Or sometimes like a lesson package, depending on how they operate. And that's really good because then you get some like supervised instruction. They can show you how to move around the horse and get on it, ride it. It's in a controlled setting. They probably have a horse who's like very calm and very safe for you to be around, which is good because horses have personalities just like, again, any other animal. So you want to pick one that's very even-tempered and reasonable for someone who's new. So that's certainly one way to do it. The way that an alternate way that you could do is find a horse rescue in your area and see if they are accepting new volunteers. And that gives you a way to be around horses for free. Like riding lessons aren't cheap. Horse rescue, they'll probably put you to work shoveling poop. Horses poop a lot. It always needs to be cleaned up. Or there are other tasks that they'll want to have you do around there. But you get to be around them. You get to help them out. It is a much lower cost of entry for it. And I really enjoy that because you get to just spend some time with them, right? It's not in this very focused, like, we're going to teach you a thing and here I'm going to show you how to make the horse do a thing. It's like, yeah, just hang out with them. They're cool, big creatures. Like shovel some poop, hang out, talk to other volunteers. It's very social. So
that's cool. So Kyle, this is going to be my one tangent. I promise this is the only one. So I just had a thought. I remember when I was a kid, and Emily, you can tell me if this is complete nonsense. This might be just like one of my random corn fried phrases. So I was always told when I was a kid that we raised cattle and we did have some horses, that they could always smell your fear. Do you think that is a real thing, or is it they just notice your body language, they notice your demeanor? That's a
good question. I'm going to go with the like whole picture answer. I think they can. What would I say? I don't know if it's the smell specifically, but I definitely think they know when you're afraid of something or of them. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's your body language, you get a little tense, your eyes get kind of big. You probably do start smelling a little bit different. Your heart rate goes up, your muscles get a little tight. So if you're on them, certainly they'll feel that. Or even if you're near them, they kind of like pick up on, you get a little jerky, you start looking around, shoulders come up. So
I mean, it kind of makes sense from like a herd animal type perspective. Like they are just hyper aware of all the inputs around them. And they are paying attention to all the different, well, if they're by themselves, you're a part of their herd, I guess. I guess you could say you're part of their herd. So they're just hyper aware. So probably is everything. I just answered my own question, but that's fine.
No, that's great. One of the things that they also really pick up on is something that I've heard called congruence. So that's if your actions and your intentions match up.
Really?
Right? So that would be like in the wild, you're at a watering hole and there's a lion that comes by and she's kind of, oh yeah, I'm just going to take a drink. I'm just going to walk by you here. Right. But you can tell she's kind of looking at you and, even though she's acting like she's going to go get a drink, she's really trying to get closer to you so she can jump on you. And with humans, that might be like, oh, I have this, this tube of dewormer that I'm going to use correctly and give it to a horse. Not a human.
Yep.
Ivermectin. Oh boy. Like I'm walking up with this tube of dewormer. I'm like, oh, hey buddy, I'm your friend. I'm your pal. Look at that. What's over there? And your intention is to grab that horse and try to get that paste in its mouth so that it stays healthy. But you're trying to be casual and cool, something like that. Or again, like some of the horses that come into the walking in circles, this horse rescue, they've never really been handled before. And so you have the halter, the thing you put on their face, and a lead rope, and you want to get that halter on them. And even if you're just walking up and super chill, like they know you have some ulterior motive behind this, right? So they're very suspicious of this. And so that can also show up in the form of like, I just had a shit day at work. I'm thinking about everything else, but I'm trying to get this horse and ask it to do stuff. And so like, they know if you're not present there, they can tell if you're thinking about other stuff. They don't know what it is, but they're like, Emily's really worried about something. And I feel like I should be worried too. I don't know what it is, but like something's not right. And I'm suspicious of things, so they're
very empathetic.
Yes. Yeah. Like learning to handle horses well is like really helpful for learning how to just like drop all of that other stuff and be present with them.
At least compartmentalize. It's like, nope, that's later. Like I got to be here.
Yeah. Like I'm not bringing that with me. Or, like some, if you do bring it with you, like I have sat down in my horse's stall and cried before in grad school. And, because this was a horse I'd had since I was a kid, like kind of came over and was like, I don't know what's wrong, but like, are you okay?
Are you okay? You're normally not like this.
Yeah, you seem like you're having a shit day. Let me hang out with you. You're my buddy. So yeah, they can be very, they know what's going on with humans. They can be very empathetic. Sometimes they're like, I don't know what's happening. I'm getting out of here because like, if you feel this bad,
something off's coming.
Something's terrible. So that, So sometimes you have your like, horse whisperer moments, and then sometimes they're just like, you're a mess and you can figure that out and come get me later.
I'll be over here.
Which, could be a very good, like, okay, I need to get my shit together.
Okay. So earlier you mentioned you're going to farrier school. That's another horse term. Let's talk about being a farrier.
Yeah, what is that?
Oh, okay. So a farrier is a professional who takes care of horses' feet. And I'm leaving that intentionally broad. So the word farrier comes from the Latin word for iron. So you've heard of like ferrous metals before. Same thing. So it's referring to the fact that many farriers make shoes and they forge, they shape steel nowadays, used to be iron back in the days, to fit a horse's foot for protection. So horses' feet naturally grow. They're made of the same stuff as your fingernails. If you have a horse that's being ridden on like rough surfaces, or if it needs extra traction, or sometimes if it has, like many of us do, funky shaped feet and it needs to be balanced, you can apply shoes to that horse's foot for that protection and balance. Not every horse needs to wear shoes. So a lot of the times a farrier will just trim the overgrown hoof and that horse can be barefoot. But yeah, it's...
I will say watching farriers work like on Instagram or something is like kind of hypnotizing. It looks so, and they make it look so easy. And I know it's way more complicated than it is, but it's just like these giant files, and they're like filing down these horses' feet. I'm like, oh.
Right, and yeah, like these knives, and they're just knifing out the extra sole that grows on the foot. So one of the things I did before I decided to commit to this crazy career change, I went and took a 3-day barefoot trimming class up in southern Colorado. And yeah, like I have watched farriers work on my horses and other horses in person. I love getting to watch all that stuff. The videos on Instagram and TikTok and all that. Actually trying to do it yourself is such it's a whole other world, right? So you have to understand the anatomy and the biomechanics of the foot. And the school that I'm going to, where I took that course, they have a really cool way of teaching that. It honestly reminds me a lot of like doing structural geology, where you're like looking at external references on the surface of something to figure out what's happening inside something that you can't see. Right. So you're thinking about like the bones that are inside the horse's hoof and the joints and making sure that they're articulating. And the way you do that is by looking at the angles on the feet and the depth of like the grooves on the bottom of the foot, all this stuff. Super, super cool. So like you can know that in your head and understand that. And that's like the first hurdle to getting good at this or even getting started. Right. And then you have to go out there with a living animal that wants, its main defense is flight. You're going to pick up one of its feet. And then you have all of these tools that you've probably never used before, and you have to actually apply that to this creature.
And there are consequences if you do it wrong.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So like at that school, they actually had us do a trim on cadaver feet first, which was a much needed intermediate step.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Which was also fascinating because they had a very wide range of limbs, like some super healthy and some that had like very clear issues with them. And so we got to, talk about things and map it out and try to infer what that foot looked like on the inside. And then we actually got to like dissect it and see what it looked like. So farrier school is going to be that in depth, even more, and a lot of hands-on practice. I know for me, like the actual use of the tools is going to be a huge, I have a lot of room to improve in that area right now, but I'm really excited because the school is exactly like tons of practice. The instructors are really awesome. So you get like very detailed critique of your work, which is the best way to learn. Right. So I'm just super excited that I get to spend 2 months like exclusively focused on learning more about this. I'm so excited.
That's cool. And it's important to note farriers, it's not just maintenance. So sometimes if your horse is acting, it's like limping or something, you call the farrier, and there might be actually something wrong with the hoof that the farrier would try to mediate and do what they can to fix it.
Exactly.
A stone stuck in there, or it got scraped, who knows, abscesses or whatever.
I was going to say, have you seen any videos where they like pop an abscess?
Yeah.
It's like Dr. Pimple Popper.
Yeah, if you're a little queasy, maybe don't watch those because it's a much larger animal than a human, so they get large abscesses too. So.
Yeah, they can get real gross. That 3-day clinic I went to, there was this huge draft horse who was the student next to me was working on, and they actually hit an abscess when they were cleaning things out. And it was kind of gross. Like I looked over and there was, like stuff spilling out of the hoof, but it was crazy because that horse had walked in slightly lame, favoring that foot a little bit. And they hit that, drained it, cleaned it out, and that horse walked off super happy, like, oh, thank goodness, that feels so much better. You know.
That reminds me when we would have the farrier come out to our farm, the horses recognized him.
Yeah.
And we're just
Did they like him?
Yeah, it's like, dude's trimming our nails today. Let's do this.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, so they would sit there super calm because they were older horses. They weren't younger.
Okay.
So they had been doing this for years and years.
Oh, there you go.
So they knew the drill and they were like, yes, this feels great. Let's get this done. Then
that's a sign of a good farrier then, if they're like,
Yeah.
yes, let's do it. You know,
they liked him. They liked
pedicure
him a lot.
time.
Actually, that kind of brings me to my next question. So all of the farriers I've ever interacted with, and it's only been a couple, they've all been like, I'll call them middle-aged men
Yes.
or older men. Is that the normal case?
That has been my experience as well. Yeah, it's still very much like a male-dominated profession.
Mhm.
There are, I think it's starting to shift, or at least there are a lot of women who are going to farrier school, and then you kind of have to wait and see. Yeah, it's a little bit like kind of the earth sciences. Like if you say a geologist, people probably still think of like someone with a big beard and a hat and a flannel walking around.
Yep.
But I think, that's one of the things I'm like looking forward to is I think there's a lot of room for people like me. And I've already been in one field that's kind of like that. So like, let's bring on a second.
So it's easy. You already know how to do it. You just come in and say, I'm here. Let's do
right.
this.
Yeah. It's not the easiest thing, but I think, everyone has different life experiences and different strengths to bring to the table. So I'm looking forward to that. It is going to be a weird career change for sure. But like I was saying, I feel like some of the science training, it hasn't been about horses, but there is a lot of like spatial thinking and thinking about, torque and rotation and things like that. Another thing that started me down this path was I had this awesome farrier in Colorado named Joe McClellan. I had a horse at the time who was having a lot of issues with his feet. We had been through a couple of different farriers. The vet had come out to see him. Nobody could really pinpoint it. They were like, well, he's just getting old. It's arthritis. Like, there's not much we can do. And it was getting worse and worse to the point where I was like, okay, I'm like calling one more farrier. And if this doesn't work, then I'm probably going to have to like say goodbye to this horse because he is not walking comfortably. Joe came out. Joe had been a civil engineer before he went to farrier school, as it turns out. So he came out, looked at the horse, kind of did a little exploratory initial trim to sort of confirm what he thought he was seeing. Yeah. It was like, okay, so let me explain to you, horse owner, what I think I'm seeing. And he has like a good non-technical ways of explaining things. Like he takes the rasp and, talks about what torque is and how we need to shorten the lever arm so we're not putting as much torque on the foot inside the bone. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah. And he was like, well, do you know what a force couple is? And I was like, yeah. It's like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, oh, I'm a seismologist. And he's, oh my God, I could go into. So then he
I can talk about stuff.
And started, drawing like, free body diagrams and stuff. And I was like, I had no idea. Like, it's silly. Like, of course, it's a very specialized field with all, so much like technical knowledge to have, but I had just never been exposed to that. And talked to Joe. He explained exactly what he was seeing and what he was going to do. And then he did it. And my horse walked off sounder than I had seen him in like 5 years.
Wow.
It's like, what? Like, you just did a miracle with engineering and science and just understanding of like biomechanics. This is the coolest thing. And then he actually knew how to do it on the horse. Yeah. Right. And that was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And so the place where I'm going to is a place that where Joe learned how to do this kind of trimming and shoeing. So I was hooked from day one. I was like, I want to learn how to do this that way. Like, there are a lot of other awesome farrier schools in the country. You can learn all kinds of things, but like the way that this place presents those concepts is just like perfect for the way I like to learn things.
No, that's great. And you have like the person went there, learned their shit real well, obviously.
Exactly. And like made a difference to this beautiful creature that I love, like gave him
sure that wasn't the only one he did that to either.
Exactly. Yeah, like just being able to do this thing that like no one else had been able to like sort of correctly identify the source of the problem and like remediate it. It's like, I want to do that.
No, I'm super excited for you. That's so cool.
You. Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. One of the things that I really enjoyed like about grad school and like my early geophysics career was like getting outside, getting to travel, getting to like talk to a lot of different people. Like the field work we did for our experiment was awesome, and I really loved that. And the more I've been in seismology, the more I keep kind of getting into management positions, and it's less time like handling instruments and looking at data and more time like sitting in Zoom meetings. So
I will do a sidebar right now for people out there that are looking into getting into earth sciences. In college and undergrad especially, they make it feel like you're going to be out in the field all the time. And then you go to grad school, because that's kind of what you have to do now to get a job as a geologist, unless you're going to be on the very low rung in like a mining or an oil operation. Go to grad school and you might have some field work. Most of the jobs our scientists do are now in the office. Like I have one of the few ones where I'm like in the field, but even then I'm in an office in the field. But like it's rare. So
yeah, there's like the image that they paint and then the reality of doing the job. And it hasn't been a bad job. Like,
no, I feel the same way about mine.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
You do cool stuff, but it's not like what they show you in the textbooks where there's just like most of the time grizzled old man with like a rock hammer out looking at a rock outcrop. They don't really do that anymore very much. Mostly computers. It's a lot of computers.
Yeah, it's a lot of like, damn it, Python, why won't you?
Yeah. Pretty much. Okay, I'm going to end that sidebar because we could talk for hours about that, I'm sure. But yeah, Kyle, it seems like his computer wanted to do a Windows update and a BIOS update. So I'm just going to bring this home by myself, I think.
Okay,
but,
sounds good. Go for it.
So I have what we call my favorite questions. So, and I ask these of everybody. The first one is, what is your biggest outdoor mistake? So you can take that any direction you want. It can be horse related. It can be mountain bike or any, like I know you rock climb too, anything out there, because it's just showing everybody that everybody's human. Everybody makes mistakes. Even the people we have on that are super, super experienced, hiked thousands and thousands of miles, they still make mistakes. So.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Okay. My biggest outdoor mistake was something that was pretty simple, but could have been very bad. And this is actually work related, but it was a fantastic adventure. So I feel like it counts.
Yeah.
In 2019, there was a magnitude 7 earthquake in Ridgecrest, California. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was working for the U.S. Geological Survey, and I got to go out there and deploy temporary seismic instruments to record the aftershock sequence. So it was like the magnitude 7 happened, jumped in a truck in Albuquerque, drove for 12 hours straight to Ridgecrest, which is in Southern California, in the Mojave Desert in July. And, got into contact with the BLM, who owns most of the land around that area. We did not get to go onto the huge Navy base out there because we had telemetry on our instruments, and they didn't like that.
They don't like that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we pretty much got there. Like earthquake happened, got a call, jumped in the truck, grabbed all of our instruments, drove out there, and immediately started putting instruments in the ground. Well, driving around the desert, trying to get to the middle of nowhere so that we're far away from any source of vibration or noise like a railroad or highways, right? Because seismometers are so sensitive, they'll pick up cars driving by. The further out you are, the more protected your equipment is also, because sometimes people will just come by and vandalize stuff, either just for fun or to take the solar panels and the batteries. So we were really trying to get out into the middle of nowhere on not much sleep and with not a lot of time to prepare for the field work. Well, it turns out as we were driving through the desert on some like very rough Jeep trail in our huge F-350, we hit something sharp. I don't even know what it was, but it was like instant flat tire. Just like, oh, that sucks. Well, like, I know we have a spare. We could change it. It'll be fine. Like, maybe we'll start heading back. It'll be all right. We're, a couple miles down this very remote road, middle of the day. We get out, found the spare tire. There's no jack in the truck.
Ooh.
There's no way to lift this truck up to get the tire off or like get the wheel off so that we can swap it out and get our spare tire on there. Mm-hmm. We're in a pretty flat area. There's no way we could like get it up on a bank and try and change it. Even if we did, like it's fully loaded in the back with some really heavy stuff. So my field partner and I just kind of like looked at each other and we swore a fair bit.
Yeah, of course.
Neither of us had thought to check.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
we have a full thing. Like, nope. It's, like 105 out. Fortunately, we had water, right? So that was the big takeaway is like, we screwed this one thing up, but we didn't screw up a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
Like we had water, we had shade. We were able to like sort of turn the truck around very carefully and drive on an increasingly shredded tire back to an area where we had cell service. And we were able to like call someone who said they could like meet us if we could make it to the paved road to change out the thing. And so we just like drove extraordinarily carefully. Like you could hear the truck dragging. We had to cross a couple of like sandy washes. By the time we got back to the road, this tire was absolutely shredded, but it managed to stay on. Yeah, the rim was trash.
Yeah.
Like it was destroyed. But we made it back. Like I had been driving when we hit the sharp thing. I was losing my mind. I felt so bad. I had just started this job. I was the person in charge of the field operations, and I was like, can you drive the truck back to the road, field partner? And he was like, yeah, I can do that. It'll be fine. Like, we got this. Don't worry. So we limped back to the road. The tow truck met us. He just loaned us a jack. We changed the tire. That was very simple. But like, if we had gotten stuck, if we hadn't had water, if we hadn't been able to get back to like a cell phone or something, like it could have gone really bad. Like it was like very scary levels of heat. So.
Yeah. And like you said, you were in a remote place too. It's not like you were near anybody that you could have walked down. It's like, hey,
no one was going to like
house?
drive by there and be like, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? This is like, several, sketchy roads away from anywhere that people regularly travel. So,
like you said, it's BLM. So I assume it was a BLM road, just straight line out to the desert.
Yeah. So it was definitely a nerve-wracking experience, but yeah, the two things I learned from that were like, always check your safety kit before you head off-road.
Yeah.
100%. And then also like, even if you screw that up, as long as you have like food, water, and shade, you can troubleshoot most stuff. Like if we had to, we could have waited for night. We could have hiked back out to where we had cell service. We could have tried getting all the way to the highway if we needed to. We could have made it work. But I really hope that never happens again.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary stuff for sure.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's perfect. That fits right in the type of thing we're trying to get at. But my last question is just a catch-all because, like I told you before we started recording, I just threw a bunch of questions on our outline. But is there a question that we should have asked you that I just kind of swung and missed and didn't include?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel feel like we covered things pretty well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. No, that's cool. That's fine too. So yeah, I'll bring it home with all of our podcast stuff. The best way to support us is to rate us 5 stars. Most people, the best place to do that really is on Apple Podcasts, I think is what it's called now. You can also do it on Spotify, that, and write us a review. If you write us a review, I will read it on here, as long as it doesn't say anything completely vulgar or is very mean to me or Kyle and I's mothers or something. The podcast Instagram is at Mere Mortal Pod. If you want to send us a note, tell us we're doing a great job or not so great a job, or want to suggest future guests, you can email us at adventuringformeremortals@gmail.com. We also have a show Discord, if that's your thing. The invite link is in the show notes. My personal Instagram is at Trevor Bowman. You can follow me there. I'm going to try to post. Well, my goal is to do daily posts of my bike tour, but we'll see if it actually happens. I might just be tired and I won't do it, but we'll see.
Do it. We want to see the post, Trevor.
Okay, I'll do it. And Kyle doesn't have social media. He's like the social media hermit, but I did make a fake Instagram account against his will, and that is called at Kyle Doesn't Have Social Media. So you can follow that. Kyle's girlfriend and I, we have complete control. Kyle doesn't even know the password. So we post things on there every once in a while. And also, as always, if you see a person that looks like Kyle, wave at them. Kyle lives in Central PA, but all the Kyles need waved at. And with that, thanks for coming on, Emily. This was great. I could really tell you're super passionate, and we love having people that are passionate about what they love. So,
well, thanks. Yeah, I'm always down to talk horse facts. So it's good to catch up with you, Trevor.
Yeah, definitely. And with that, I guess we'll see everybody next month. I guess Kyle didn't get back in time with all of his computer updates, but hey, I handled it. It's cool.
There you go.
All right. See everybody next month. All right. Bye.